No, I said answer these questions three, so we're only a third done.
Two.
Thank you very much. But question number two from Mr. Brelo Light, the man, the also myth, the also legend. He asks, how badly do you think the injuries of Bryan, Reigns, and Bad News Barrett screwed up the plans WWE had going forward? How would you rate their ability to cope with it and advance their storylines on a scale of 1 to 10?
I'll start with this one. How badly did all three of them getting injured screw up their plans? Well, for Reigns and Bryan, I would say a whole hell of a lot.
Yeah.
For Barrett, not as much. It didn't seem like they had any long-term plans for Barrett, but they definitely had plans with Lesnar and Bryan, and obviously Reigns potentially main eventing this coming year's WrestleMania. So, and how would I rate how they've managed it? I would give them a 5 for both, because it's not like they changed too much. They just plugged a new guy in there. For Bryan, they just plugged in Cena. And for Reigns, they kind of just plugged in Ambrose. So they didn't really change too much. They just put in a new guy. So I give them like half credit for both.
Yeah, there was a dark period for a while there where it seemed like, oh God, everything's going to go bad now that they're gone. But they're starting to pick up pace now with Ambrose and Rollins and that storyline. So it's getting better, but there was definitely a slump. And I feel like Daniel Bryan being injured was a huge cause of that slump.
Yeah, definitely. I think that out of the three, I don't think anybody's going to disagree by saying that Daniel Bryan's the one that really, he was at his peak when he got injured. With Bad News Barrett, it's what Ryan said. We're big fans of him, but let's be honest. What was he going to be? Champion, and then, what? There wasn't really anything else. However, with Reigns...
I'm afraid I've got some bad news.
Exactly. But with Reigns, I think that's the biggest threat, I guess, to his career right now, because with D-Bry, he was so over. You're like, okay, so when he comes back, people are just going to go crazy for him. But with Reigns, it was like, let's switch it to Ambrose. And then a week later, everybody's like, okay, yeah, I'll take Ambrose. Like, I will easily take Ambrose. Even this week when he was on Raw, you have a New York audience, and the people were popping for Reigns being on satellite, but it was kind of like, cool, man. When you're back, we'll see you back. But I didn't really feel anything else. And as for part 2 of the advancing storylines, I'll give him like a 4, almost even like a 3, because I think it's an issue. Like what you mentioned, Ryan, I agree that's what they did. They just plugged another guy in. But when you can easily just replace guy A with guy B, that tells me a lot about your characters. It's like you can't switch. We keep bringing up, Walter White, but I'll always think that's the best character example. You can't replace that character with another character because there's just so many elements. And when you can easily do that in 1 week, it's like, come on, you're doing something wrong.
Damn, dude.
Yeah, I think that's it.
You just had like the best take I think you've ever had on this show right there. That was perfect.
Yeah.
What else can be said? I really like that point though, that you probably have a problem with your show if you can just plug in a new guy and everything can run relatively smoothly. You couldn't just plug the next guy into Stone Cold Steve Austin's role. Or you couldn't just have the next guy be like The Rock in his role. So, awesome points.
But isn't Dean Ambrose kind of the counterpoint to that? Because I don't think you could plug anybody into Ambrose's role right now and play his character and it go exactly the same.
Well, I think that's where we're at right now, which is like, it's working, but it's working because somebody got injured. Let's be honest. The way that Ambrose was being booked before that, it was sort of like, okay, he's going to be lukewarm. But the question is, once Reigns comes back, he was just plugged in as Guy B. So is he going to be Guy B again? Or are they going to actually tell Reigns like, hey, you know what? We kind of like Ambrose a little more.
Well, yeah, exactly. It's Daniel Bryan, when he left, like you said, he was very established at this point. So when he comes back, it's pretty safe to say he's going to have a secure spot. But with Ambrose kind of taking over Reigns' spot, it's kind of like Reigns could potentially lose out if Ambrose gets enough steam and becomes, a big deal. So, Reigns is in a lot of trouble.
Believe that.
I think it's a total real possibility that Reigns just gets lost in this shuffle. Plus, think about, say Reigns comes back and they kind of force him into that old spot that he had. It almost feels like he's a new generation Batista.
Yeah, you could have another Batista-Debray situation.
Exactly, where Ambrose is now the guy that everybody wants to see, but Roman Reigns is in that position.
Did we talk about that before? Reigns came back and won the Rumble, and then people would be pissed and cheer for Ambrose. So you could have an exact same scenario.
Yeah, it's crazy because with a guy like Batista, he likes being a heel. I mean, he said it in multiple interviews, and it works best. So that whole thing with Batista, it's like, okay, he can make it work. But Reigns is so new, you got to ask yourself, can he do that? That's a topic for another day, maybe when he comes back. But thank you for that awesome question, man. That was a really good conversation. Now, we're still not done. We got one more question. So, Keith.
Exactly. Here is number 3 of the questions. It is from Mr. Noah Young. What are your views on the WWE repeating the same main event on both Raw and SmackDown week after week after week? I added the week part on as my own thing, but regardless.
There are 2 ways to answer this. One is the production, low attention span audience thing. Then the other one is like us as wrestling fans. I mean, I've said it time and time again. We get punished a lot because we consume the product on a weekly basis. That's almost bad because not everybody's on that same chair, that same seat where they watch it on a weekly basis. I mean, I know people that basically only watch pay-per-views. I can't imagine doing that. But for them, you got to repeat matches on Raw and SmackDown, I guess, just hoping they watch one or the other. And how many times, I'll take one step further, they repeat the pay-per-view match on Raw like the night after in case, you still got to capture an audience. I think that takes a lot of it away because if the storyline is mediocre, all you have left is wanting to see that match. So when you just give that match, you whore it out everywhere. It's like, okay, so what am I left with?
Because what the main event has been recently, I'm all right with it. The whole Dean Ambrose, John Cena, Kane, Randy Orton thing. But the problem with it is that there's never been a definitive finish to any of the matches. It's just disqualification after disqualification after disqualification. It just kind of... When I say the words Raw main event, what do you think?
I want to go to bed.
Yeah, exactly. There's nothing to look forward to with it. Like, oh, wonder who's going to potentially get hit with a cinder block this week. Ooh.
Well, when it comes to SmackDown, SmackDown is on Fridays because it doesn't matter, and SmackDown doesn't matter because it's on Fridays. It's just a lose-lose situation. It hasn't been relevant since the brand split has diminished. And they can't figure out a way to make people care. Yet they still oversaturate by adding an hour to Raw in a main event. So now SmackDown has even less to offer.